Hello and welcome to Arts Dynamics Talks in whatever time zone you are in. I'm Sofie Marin, I'm founder and CEO of Arts Dynamics, and every week I meet with leading creators and change makers within the cultural and creative industries to learn what's going on in their part of the world, what they're doing to navigate current times, and also what they're seeing for the future. And today I've got the great honor of inviting a dear friend and someone who I look up to very much too. It's a founding member of Arts Dynamics, but he has such a fascinating history, such a fascinating career, and I cannot wait to spend time with Will Reed from Japan to talk more about those things. Will, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, and you are back because you were here the first time we did these sessions during the pandemic.
That's right.
Yeah.
A lot of things have changed since then.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of stuff has changed since then, and some things are the same, but many things have changed. And today's topic, you and I, when we talked about today, what is going to be the focus of this talk, we said it's going to be about how you repurpose, reinvent, and repackage your skills as an artist. And I happen to know that you've done that not only once or twice, but many, many times. So how about, first of all, you just 6 times. How about you introduce yourself a little bit to the people who are here and listening? Who are you? Tell us more about you and what you do.
Well, my name is Will Reed. I'm from the United States, but I first came to Japan, if you can believe it, 52 years ago as an exchange student. And that was, I was a college student, but I also wanted to study Aikido and calligraphy. So that began a half-century career, which has been consistent throughout. But of course, you need to make a living. You can't make a living as a student. You can't make a living often as an artist. So I think I've been through maybe 6 different careers, and I'm now entering my 7th. So I'm getting kind of good at making the transition. And I thought that might be a good topic to cover for today.
Yeah, and I mean, you and I met the first.
Yeah, I live in Japan. I have for many, many years.
Yeah, exactly. And we met when I was traveling in Japan with a group of entrepreneurs from around the world, and you welcomed us and you taught us about samurais, and you taught us calligraphy. And I remember when I met you that day, Will, there are certain people who have that particular skill to just allow you to sort of slow down and to breathe and to just be very, very present in the moment. And as a creator myself, I know it's very easy to move fast and to always sort of look into the future. But you, out of those 2 weeks that we were traveling in China and Japan, I remember our day with you, just because you just created the space for us to just stop and breathe and to be very, very present.
Oh, how nice. And we had a very nice Japanese garden, if I recall.
Yeah.
That certainly helped the environment.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And you're also a founding member of Arts Dynamics. So I'm really honored to have you as a member of Arts Dynamics too. And what made you join Arts Dynamics?
Well, I had thought of myself as I guess you say, an author, speaker, entrepreneur, artist, not really well defined on any of those. And then when you launched Arts Dynamics, I thought, well, this is really interesting because people speaking the same language, whether they're in music or the arts, they're speaking the same language, but at the same time needing to make a living. So having to deal with the process of marketing, but not just to like 10 times your income and all this, investor this and that, but more so that you can be sustainable as an artist, so you can continue to do what you did. A friend of mine, Michael Gelb, years ago said, you need to find a passion in life, a hobby. And then the next thing you need to do is figure out how to pay for it, because most hobbies cost something. You got to take lessons, you got to buy supplies, all the rest of it. And then you need to find a way to actually make money from it. I said, so what's after that? I said, you need to find a way to make lots of money from it. Still working on that, but it's quite a nice thing to be able to be paid to do what you love to do.
Yeah. And so from an artist point of view, right? From the heart and soul of an artist. I know you mentioned that a few times.
Yeah. There was a book written way back in the 70s called Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. It's a theme it's a great title. but it's not actually true. I mean, well, I can't say it's not true. It's not so easy.
Yeah.
You can do what you love and find that the money doesn't follow. You have to do other things to make the money follow. But it's a
Yeah.
worthy cause, and it's better than just giving up on it and saying, well, okay, I can't do this, so I'll just do it on my weekends, and I'll just support myself with an ordinary, boring job.
Yeah, I think if you were to ask most creators, I think most would say that they love what they do, and if the money would follow the passion, we would be in a
Oh,
very different situation, I think, in our industry.
well, art
Uh,
style offers that promise. So, and the techniques, to make it happen. So that was really my main motivation in joining.
Yeah, thank you. And it's been a pleasure and a blessing to follow your work as well these past few years. And I know that you've also just now you're about to launch 2 online memberships, and we will talk more about that a little bit later. But first, well, I just would love to learn a little bit more about you. As a professor of Japanese arts, you've also had an employment. You still do work there, but you're also building, your
Yeah.
online business on the side. So how does that work?
Well, you're starting at the end of the story, and I'll try to make it
You can
simple.
start at the beginning and work yourself towards the end. That's fine.
I majored in Japanese language and area studies, and I came to Japan in 1972, graduated in 74. And that was just wonderful. It just absolutely changed my life and perspective. But especially back then, that was before the quality revolution. And so as people said, what, Japan? Why did you study a difficult language like that? What else did you do? Oh, just the culture, what? So that was really difficult. I think my first job was working in a Japanese restaurant. I said, that's not why I went to college to do this, right? But eventually I decided that I need to really get a hold of my own career and life planning. So I actually got certified in a system of that, tried doing that for a while. And I went back to graduate school and got a teaching license. And I did that for a little while, worked in the family business for a while. And eventually it took me 10 years, but I came back to Japan in 83 and hit the ground running as a freelance. I spoke Japanese, but it still was a few years before I could actually survive as a translator. But it was interesting back then because, for example, one day I was riding on the bus to Aikido the early morning, and the guy who sat in front of me worked for a publisher, and we got to know each other. And he said, by the way, we're getting ready to publish a book of English dialogues and tapes. Do you know anybody that could help? I said, yeah, I could do that myself. He said, no, this is a job for 10 people. Well, let me give it a try. So I did it, and it was a really good chunk of change, right? So things would come to me without seeking. Actually, that's been mostly how it works. Not going and applying for something or competing for something. It's just somebody talks to you. It wasn't advertised, and then it comes. And I did that for a while, and I got specialized in translating in the automotive field, and that was a period of 15 years of my life where I was working as an automotive journalist and translator. I mean, I interviewed F1 drivers, and I went to England with some Japanese sports car makers, and we visited the F1 constructor factories, and it was just a really different different side of life, But I did that for a while, and then Daniel Pink wrote a book called A Whole New Mind. He's written a lot of good books, but that was one of the early favorites. And he said that that the right brain is the way that you can survive what he called the 3 A's. Are you familiar with that book?
No, I'm not.
Okay, it's a really, really good book. It's kind of timeless. I think it came out around year 2000. But he said that the 3 A's that are going to basically take away all of our jobs, and they are abundance, Asia, and automation. And while the terminology is a little bit old, that's essentially what happened. All 3 of those things happened to me because abundance, well, everybody's doing suddenly what I was doing. So how to distinguish myself. And then I was actually making a pretty good living as a translator. And then suddenly my major clients said, well, there's this group from China and they can do, it's not as good as yours, but for 1/3 of the price, if you're willing to match it, we can. No, I'm not. I was 50 years old, right? So then have to leave that aside. And I got then certified in guerrilla marketing and mind mapping, and became a master trainer of both of those. So writing books, author, speaker, seminar work. And then after about 10 years, I got an offer to teach as a university professor, which I've been doing now for 10 years. And also during that time, television commentator. So I was like doing all these different things, constantly reinventing. And now this is my 10th year and it's the last year. So I have to retire from the university work now. So I've got maybe 9 months left. So I'm now transitioning into my 7th career, which will be as membership site and creator. So I'm just getting launched. So it's I don't have a lot of hindsight to draw on, but I'm very much in the process. I'm happy to talk about that.
Yeah, I just, I'm so amazed by the fact that you are so rooted in tradition and really you're being very respectful also of the Japanese tradition as a culture, but also within the arts. At the same time, you are one of the few people I know who are also testing out all of these new automation tools. And I mean, you've even dabbled with metaverse. Yeah. And, looking into AI and now this new platform that you're building, these memberships, I think it's very exciting to see that you can do both. You can both honor, the legacy and the history being very much here and now, but also, exploring and looking into the future. I just want to say, we just got a comment. I love your work and teaching method, Professor Reed, and a big heart. Thank you for teaching me calligraphy. Let's see what it says. Thank you for teaching me calligraphy, samurai history, and Namba. So, yeah. Yeah. I know that you've got a big following. You've got many people who love what you do. So what would be your advice, to others who might be also in a position where, as you said, things change. We live in a very fast moving times, and what worked yesterday doesn't work today, and they might have to pivot. They might need to find new ways. For you, because you have done this so many times, what would be your advice?
Well, you have to be constantly learning, and you have to love what you're doing, because if you don't, it's not sustainable. You're just going to burn out, right? So if you love what you're doing, you can put up with a lot of struggle and maybe lean times and so forth. But you have to be sustainable, and that in itself requires energy. And then, so I would think love of learning, mastery of the craft. You need to constantly be improving. You have to be what somebody called it, be a leading learner. And I found too that in the process, while I am an artist, I'm also a teacher and a writer. So I love sharing the process of what is behind my art and what goes through my mind, and then bringing others along. Like I had a calligraphy class this morning with my students. And I'm just amazed. I'm so proud of them. They, in such a short time, they can produce this amazing skill with the brush. And I think it's because I've sort of showed them the shortcuts, and those who are really open to it, they just make so much progress. I mean, Japanese look at their work and said, "Oh, how many years have you been doing?" "Oh, 1 month." "What?" So yeah, and so I think I've mastered the knack of how to teach the knack of mastery. And that's what I want to bring into my new membership sites. Yeah. Why not? We've got 10 now, going on 10 years teaching at university, and putting the best of that, the best of the best, into my membership sites.
Yeah. And I mean, you're a great example of someone who is a creator themselves. You create yourself, but also, and copyrighted work. I mean, you with your calligraphy paintings and your artwork and all that you do, but also, as you said, as a teacher and as an educator, and also being employed, but also now bringing that knowledge and that expertise into your own online education space. We do know that the creator industry is growing immensely, and we know that the education space, I saw numbers the other day, it was presented by one of the big entrepreneur gurus out there online, who shared how the two different education economies, the traditional education system, how that was going down, and how online independent training is going up and increasing tremendously financially for not only the economy as a whole, but for teachers and educators in that space. And they are creating these micro niches. You don't need that many students to actually be able to create like monthly recurring revenue, or courses or workshops or seminars, which can actually sustain you as a creator. So Do you see that as well? Yeah.
The reason why I think traditional education is going down is it's quite expensive, and there's a lot of competition, and the value of the degree, it's still there. I mean, people will still pursue it. I mean, we have a waiting list, and it grows every year. So I mean, there are people still wanting to do this, but what's kind of driving me crazy now is that the desire on the administration's part to measure everything, the rubrics and all this stuff, just drives me crazy, because some things, particularly in the creative industries, cannot be measured. Well, the moment you start to measure it, you actually kill it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can measure the skill of a person making a copy of a piece of calligraphy, because there's something you're comparing it to. But if you're talking about more of a freestyle painting, how do you say, well, your painting is better than yours? You can't, right? It's like, how many points is that worth, right?
Yeah, exactly. And tracking and measuring, we've touched upon that before, even in these books, how, especially in the world of entrepreneurship and business and marketing and sales, it's all about tracking and measuring and having your KPIs in place. And you need to know, your sales numbers. But as an artist, I guess there are different layers to it. One is the sales and marketing side, the business side, but the other is, as you say, how do you qualify what's good art or not? How do you track and measure that?
It's one thing to measure your performance because you need to improve, or you need to, make ends meet. But what I'm thinking about is like in evaluation, how you have to put points on everything that everybody does. And it's like, what right, or what what makes you the judge that can say that about somebody else, So it's quite artificial, I feel. And that is sort of driving me on to the next phase, where in the membership side, I don't need to do that, thankfully. One other thing I wanted to look at, I was thinking back over these 6 different phases of my career development, and then moving now into the 7th. And I thought there's some consistent hurdles. So maybe if I could say a few words about those.
Yeah, of course. Please do.
The first one is the fear of the unknown, because you're moving into, like, when I went into the automotive field, I thought, okay, I'd been a translator, but I didn't know anything about cars, right? And so that was kind of scary, because I had to translate, for people who do know a lot about cars. And so I actually took a course in power mechanics by correspondence. It took me a year. It was really, really difficult. Probably the first and last person ever did that as a foreigner, to be trained. It's all on paper, but as a mechanic, basically, just to know what's happening under the hood. And so after I finished that, I realized, okay, now I'm pretty comfortable. I know when they're talking about a muffler, they're not talking about a scarf. They're talking about, the exhaust system. But when then I realized, I don't know the industry people. So I need to know more what's happening, who the players are, and what the industry news is. And I found a trade newspaper called Japan Automotive News. And I just wanted it as a news source. So I went and I met the publisher, and he said, you should be an automotive journalist. So what's that? Well, you can go and you can write articles for my paper. I can't pay you, but I'll print your articles. You can, on the strength of that, you can go and interview presidents. And so I was doing that for a while. Then I got invited to be the Japan representative for a aftermarket motorsports parts association from Los Angeles. I was their Japan rep. I was doing that and translating and doing all this at the same time, right? And I hadn't intended to do any of that, but just learn the path of learning constantly led me in that direction. And then it got to the point where it was just too much. And then when they said they're going to cut my pay because of this Chinese group, I said, well, it's okay, I'm out. But that was 15 years, and I actually learned quite a lot about that, and I'm not using any of it now. I mean, as it is, I use the sort of the people skills and the attitudes, but not the actual knowledge. So that the fear of the unknown is big, and you just have to kind of just grasp it, right? And you don't need to know that much. I mean, that correspondence course was a bit overkill, but I think if you know 50 to 100 technical words that are used in the industry, you can pretty much understand what people are talking about. But you have to have your finger on the pulse of what's happening. And then that will contribute to overcoming the second hurdle, which is lack of confidence. If you haven't done it before, it's going to be a little touchy. But when you actually grasp it, it was the old thing, the Scottish national flower is the thistle. And if you touch it lightly, it pricks your finger. But if you clasp it firmly, it turns to dust. So you get confidence by just doing it, by taking action. And then in the beginning, of course, you have the third hurdle would be a limited professional network. But that actually is pretty fast when people understand and like your attitude, that you can really slip into that very easily. And I think it's a little different now because so much is online. But in the old days, you had to be out there and meeting people and lots of business cards. And then maybe the fourth hurdle is starting from scratch, although there are consistency. I mean, the vocabulary and the players' names and everything is different, but there's a lot of consistency from one industry to another, surprising amount. And so you start to recognize patterns. So you're not really starting from scratch. Probably the biggest hurdle is financial considerations, but if you don't have any choice, like you burned the bridge, you burned your boats, you can't go back, right? So you just go forward, and then somehow it works out. And then there were two more: resistance from others. I actually haven't had much of that. I've been fortunate. My family and friends have always supported and been kind of interested in what I was doing. So I actually found, rather than resistance, I found a lot of support. Even my offer to work at the university, that came almost out of nowhere. I mean, I'd been writing a column in the daily Yomiuri newspaper, 800 words every week, no pay, for 4.5 years. Just kept doing it. And once in a while, I'd meet somebody who read my column. That was nice, Oh, you read my column. And then I was invited to be a judge at a speech contest. And I didn't really want to do it, but I sort of owed the person a favor because they'd gotten me a TV gig. And so I went, and there was a guy there who actually had read my column. And so we had a nice conversation about that. He said, "Oh, we should have, let's get together for coffee sometime." Well, that didn't happen. And then a year later, the same speech contest comes up, and he's there again. And we have the same conversation, and he makes the same offer. Well, that didn't happen. And then the third year when it happened, I thought, well, this is a Los Angeles, let's have lunch. It's just a greeting. It has not intended to happen at all. But 5 months later, I got an email from him, and he said, "Let's meet at the Tokyo American Club." Well, what's this about? So he said, "How'd you like to move to Yamanashi Prefecture and be a full-time professor?" I said, "What?" And so he had been reading my column. He'd met me a few times, and he was going to be the dean of this college. And so basically, having never been a professor before, I just went right to full professor,
Wow.
So it was like, that's really not easy to do, right? And how many does that kind of offer come up, right?
Yeah. But maybe go on, and I'll ask you later.
You have to be certified, so to speak. The Minister of Education looks at what you can do. I was pretty pleased. They said, "Okay, are you qualified to teach calligraphy?" Oh, 10th down in calligraphy, published author, good. They accepted that. I didn't have to have a degree in that. I had a master's degree, didn't have a PhD. I just went right into full professor, which is pretty awesome when I think about it. But all good things come to an end. So this is my 10th year, and they don't let you stay longer than 10. So, yeah. But again, it wasn't sought. It just came to me, right?
Yeah.
I think running the hurdle race and jumping over them. And then when you jump over one hurdle, sometimes you knock them down, but sometimes they make you hesitate. But if you keep jumping over the hurdles, it gets easier.
Yeah. I'm right now, I'm also a keen learner, as you know, and right now I'm studying the Infinite Game, which was highlighted by Simon Sinek. It wasn't him. He wasn't the one that came up with it, but he wrote a book, and he's done a lot of talks about it. And he also did a podcast with Brene Brown, where they had a conversation about also leadership, within the Infinite Game and understanding the game we're playing. And also, I just reflected upon, us in the cultural and creative space, how many finite games and how many power plays there are, where we assume that we know who the players are. We assume that we know, the conditions. Whereas actually, if we were to understand that it is more of an infinite game, then things can change throughout the time, and we can reinvent and we can repackage. And because the whole goal isn't to get into the game. The whole goal is actually to stay and play the game.
Yeah,
And it sounds to me, based on what you are saying here, that you are sort of staying inside this infinite game and just changing with the times. Would that be a fair?
No, you turned me on to that book, and I'm very grateful for that. I like Simon Sinek a lot. He's a great speaker. He's got a talk on that subject, but also his book is quite interesting. But yeah, the finite game, when I look back at all the finite games that I was a part of, they're over,
Yeah.
The people are not there anymore. They went out of business. That technology doesn't exist anymore. Those games are over. But some of the people, I guess people have to go do something, right? I don't know. Some of them just disappeared, but some of the people just kind of reinvent themselves, and they're back. They're playing a different game, or maybe they're playing the infinite game of sustainability, which is quite inspiring, right? And the more you get comfortable with that, the more you realize you're actually drawing on your inner talents or your skills as a person or as an artist, your attitudes, that they stay with you. And they are tested by these smaller challenges, but then you get stronger as a result of doing that, and therefore you're still in the game. So yeah, sustainability is really, really important.
Yeah. I also have another question, and that is, or a reflection. The world of entrepreneurship is often painted with this sort of pink, fluffy, it's supposed to be something, I wouldn't say romantic, but it's like something that's being portrayed as something that's not that hard, or at least, especially for us in the arts as well. It's like more and more we are being forced into becoming freelancers or entrepreneurs. Public funding is decreasing, and there is more and more demand on us to actually be self-employed or be able to sort of go between employment and self-employment. And another thing I've really been reflecting upon, and I would love to hear your take on that, is the kind of resilience and grit it takes to actually be an entrepreneur. And the sort of the shadow sides of running your own business. Is hard enough to be a creator, but to be able to have, everything that supports that. And what it feels like when you don't have the money coming in, or, you have your creative visions, and it's a struggle, it's a hardship. And I find, doing martial arts myself, I train Muay Thai and kickboxing, and I find since I really started leveling up doing that, it has actually helped me a lot in my business, because it helps that grit and determination, and it helps you stay focused and aligned. And with your martial arts background, are you able to draw anything from that as part of, chopping and changing and moving, with the times? Or
absolutely, that has been the one consistent thing that I've just been doing, steadily. Aikido and calligraphy, just continuously. And it's, I don't know, it's like you have this source of inspiration and energy, which keeps you young. It keeps you revivable. I don't know if it's a word, but yeah, entrepreneurship is not easy at all. And I think that the thing is, if you're struggling to go out and try to make sales, people don't like to talk to salespeople. That you're going to be rejected. And so some people try to play the numbers game. They just, if you call 100 people, you might get 5. That's fun, right? And so what I've found is that it's much better to just show your value and be passionate about what you're doing, but be connected and let people get to know you. And then you get invitations, like this invitation to become a professor. That just came out of the blue. And even the article, the column that I wrote for 4.5 years, that also came out of the blue. I was at a party and somebody said, well, there's this column we have, and the person who's been writing it is stepping down. Do you know anybody that'd be interested? Yes. We can't pay you anything. That's okay. So it all just comes to you. And I call it serendipity. So I have a great deal of faith in serendipity and synchronicity.
Yeah.
Much more than chasing after sales.
Yeah, and I think maybe it has to do with resilience and self-discipline, and it's good. I'm a big fan of goal setting and having an idea of what you want, where you're heading, and why that is important. But at the end of the day, it's about what we do on a daily basis.
Mm.
And I just know, because I know you now since a few years back, and I'm lucky to do so. I know that you have that discipline and you always show up, and I just find it very inspiring. And for people who are listening into this, I highly recommend you check out Will, because you are so productive. You're doing so many things. You're wearing many different hats. And that is also something we've talked about. What do you do when you're multi-passionate, when you do many different things? How do you actually create a business or a career around that?
Yeah.
What has gone, what has been your thinking around that? How have you used that to your advantage in your own business and career?
That's a good question. I mean, sometimes I think I'm just doing too many different things, but if there are other, for example, I tap dance. I've been tap dancing for 20 years, right? And last year I performed 4 times, once in front of an audience of 1,000 people. I'm not getting paid for it. I'm not good enough to be a professional, but it's so inspiring. I mean, I do 30 minutes a day at home, I just practice.
Yeah.
And so having something like that is a really good way to keep, it's like a home base, right? You can come back to. But you can't be professional or being able to be paid at everything you do. That's really difficult if you try to make everything equal. So I'm trying to focus more now on calligraphy and Namba, which Namba is, I call the art of physical finesse. And I've created a membership site around both of those. The Song of the Brush is the membership site, which is to teach mindfulness. And I have students come in. And the one student from India said, Professor, I have to tell you at the beginning of the course, I can't read. I said, what do you mean you can't read? How'd you get into college? He said, you can't read. I said, no, I can read. I just can't focus. My eyes won't stay on a steady line. They wander all over the place. Too many video games. But after 3 or 4 weeks of calligraphy, he came back. He says, I can read again. My mind is calm. I can follow a line of text. So that was quite gratifying to see. And I found some students are quite nervous in the beginning. Their hands shaking, and I teach them breathing techniques and how to steady the hand. And they start to get really good. And it's quite inspiring. They sort of forget the passage of time. And so all this great mindfulness that happens in using the small brush is very inspiring. And actually there's scientific evidence behind it that it actually resets the parasympathetic, the autonomic nervous system. So if you're like overstimulated or understimulated, it will reset it in as short as 15 to 20 minutes.
Wow.
And students, they experience this, right? So I said, hey, I can bottle this, right? So I put that into my course, and I've got a student now in there who's really enjoying that, the videos and searchable content and AI, Searchy. Well, you told me about Searchy as a platform, but you can ask it questions 24/7 coaching, and it's just really cool. And then the other site is Namba, the art of physical finesse, which is more about sustainability, good posture, deep regenerative breathing, voice projection. So I think a lot of it's from martial arts, but it's really more about sustainability. So if you have the energy and you have the calmness, you can do a lot with that.
Yeah. Yeah, you can. And I think it's good to talk about this because, again, these talks every week is really to figure out how to survive and thrive as a creator, right? And there are many different ways for us to monetize and to make money doing what we love and to actually be paid for our passion, right? And one of the most popular ways that we're seeing now in the world is actually the monthly subscription model.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening, if you are in any way, shape, or form creating something, teaching, training, but could even be that you yourself are the performer or you are the one that are sharing what you are creating, there are ways for you to package that into various bits. I talk about the different layers. You can create something in the physical world, something hybrid, something digital, or even immersive, and vice versa. or sort of right back again. We see it sort of goes back again, people creating in the immersive metaverse, even a Web3 environment, and it's now being translated into the physical realm. I mentioned this on previous talks. So I'm curious, because you are now moving, you're taking all your expertise and you are packaging it to this monthly subscription membership. You're really just at the very start of a founding member launch.
Yeah.
So what made you, my question to you, Will, is what made you choose that as a model? And where did you start?
Well, you inspired me to start on that actually, and actually as well as to select that platform. And I said, oh, this is really, really good. For one, it's once you create the content, whether it's a video or PDF or some sort of content, it stays there, right? And you can keep adding to it. Now, I'm still very active in the so-called real world. I go out and I teach and I get commissions to do calligraphy, real world stuff. And I like that balance, that sort of hybrid balance, but it's really hard to depend on that. I don't live in Tokyo. I mean, I can get in there fairly easily, but it's difficult where I am physically located to find a large client base, unless I'm online, in which case the world is at my fingertips, right? So that's probably the main motivation. And it's nice to have a container or sort of an archive for all of your stuff. You can go back and keep tweaking it or keep adding to it.
Yeah, and how do you know what to record and how to set it up?
Oh, well, I've already had. I mean, I've been teaching, say, the calligraphy course that I'm doing now. This is the 19th time, okay, because I teach it twice a year. So I'm approaching the 20th time of doing this. I've taught students from over 40 countries, and in the past few years, I've gotten to the point where a lot of them get really good really fast. So I've figured out how to do it, right, with real people who starting from zero, right? Actually, it's a weird thing I've discovered is that the people who struggle the most are the Chinese and Japanese.
Oh, okay.
Would that be right? And then I realized that because they can read it, they don't look at it. And so they're not looking at the master copy. They're just, oh, I can write that. Well, it doesn't look anything like the original. It's like representational drawing. You have to look at it to see what it is you're doing. Now, the people who just got off the boat, so to speak, they've only been here a few weeks, they can't read it, but they do an amazing job of writing it because they have to really look at it. And so, but I thought still that's not satisfying. Is people who can write it, but they can't read it, and people who can read it, but they can't write it. So how to close that gap? And so I'm now experimenting this year with reciting aloud. So if you can read it aloud, your mind has to go there because you're actually thinking of the meaning and you're making the sounds. So that's the next layer of challenge. So I just keep adding to it. And so I've talked about reinvent, repurpose, repackage. I've done that almost 20 times now. And plus, I have 2 books on calligraphy. This is the most recent one. So, I mean, that's a lot of thought that went into this. It's very easy for me to package and repackage content.
Yeah. And in the online business world, that's what we talk a lot about, right? That you can create one big piece of content and then you can syndicate that content into many different formats: long form, short form, audio, video, text-based, all sorts of different formats, both from a marketing perspective, but actually also from a sales perspective. And I don't know about you, but I find it highly inspiring because I hear a lot, especially from the art space, there's a lot of negative talk where you hear a lot about all the bad things that are happening and how hard it is to be an artist. But at the same time, the creator industry is growing, and never ever in history before has it been easier for creators to actually create their own ecosystems, to set up their own pathways for income streams. I'm not saying it's super easy, you could just do it within 24 hours, but at the same time, you could literally have your first sale within the next 24 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, there are ways of doing that, and you are living proof of that.
Well, I, for example, Canva, which is a wonderful site, I went on there and they have this AI, and as if you can see this on my phone, it's somebody on a tightrope.
Yeah.
There's a little figure there on a tightrope. And it's actually a short video. So when you click on it, It's not really displaying very well. What happened?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what happens is it comes up with a text that reads, when life gets wobbly, learn to move with grace.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. When life gets wobbly, managing challenges with grace. That's it. Yeah. So yeah, it kind of disappeared, right? But it's a little graphic, and I made that on Canva, so it's kind of you can say a lead magnet, and say, okay, so how do you do this? How do you learn to walk, not on a high wire, but just on the ground, and be steady and confident, and the way you walk will then influence the people around you as well. If you walk into a room, you're really feeling nervous, and you make them nervous, right?
Yeah, that is true. So basically what you are now explaining for us here as well is you have this employment right now as a professor. You are now building this online membership site on this, actually two, and building that recurring revenue, which means you can also transition from employment into self-employment fully. And I know many of the creators in this community that we have here are many, of course, are full-time, but there are also many who actually do have some sort of a part-time job in addition to their own work. And I get a lot of questions about, how can I grow and scale my artistic work so that I can transition away from employment and into full-time, creator mode. And this is one good example that you're showcasing here today. I love that.
Well, that's what we want to do, isn't it? But if you look back to artists in the say, earlier part of the 20th century, the songwriters, some of the jazz standards that, they're everywhere, right? How much money has come from that? The songwriters got paid like 25 cents a song.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous, how low that was.
Yeah.
But they kept churning the songs out, and they somehow managed it. I don't know if they got royalties from it, probably not. But it's never been easy, and people still, the ones who survived are the ones who just stuck with it, even under those unfavorable circumstances.
Yeah. And speaking of AI, we touched upon AI before. You mentioned it, with your course platform. AI and copyright is huge right now. And I'm curious, from your standpoint, is this something that you are considering, or
we use it a lot, actually.
Yeah.
The challenge is sometimes AI is really good, and sometimes it just doesn't get it. It's just, there's not enough information out in cyberspace about that particular niche or medium, or it just doesn't get it, right? So you can always rewrite, right? And sometimes you say, okay, I can do better than this.
Yeah.
I'm glad that happens once in a while. I don't want to be always aced by the AI, but it's often very, very convenient for putting together, researching something and doing it in a short time. But you're just clicking a button and you get all this stuff is spurted out. Sometimes it makes things up that aren't even true, right? Even books that don't exist.
Yeah.
I was like, what? I don't know where that came from. But it's not going away. And so figuring out a way to work with it. I encourage my students to use it, but not to copy it, because then that would just be plagiarism. And anyway, you don't grow. I tell them, this is one of my favorite quotes by Charlie Tremendous Jones, said that you will be the same person in 5 years, except for the people you meet and the books you read. I said, the problem is you don't read books, and you don't meet people outside of your very narrow circle of friends. So you're going to be still like you just got out of high school 5 years from now. How's that? I said, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. They want to grow. So if you want to grow, don't just click a button and expect everything to be done for you. You have to struggle and create yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And with copyright as well, there is a lot of debate. And I don't know if you followed. It's always interesting to see what's happening in other industries too. Right now, we have this huge beef going on between Kendrick Lamar and Drake, and they're going back and forth, dissing each other on writing new rap songs. And the whole internet is sort of on fire because of this. And there are a lot of streamers that are live streaming and reacting to these songs. And I learned something that I didn't know, which was that apparently, and disclaimer if this is not true, but I read somewhere and I thought it was interesting. So there's something to look into a little bit more from a marketing perspective and to learn from a copyright and marketing perspective. Apparently, Kendrick and his team, they decided to forego the copyright. On YouTube, they remove music because
Yeah.
you have copyright strikes, and apparently they waived that somehow, which meant that streamers could just listen to music and react, and they were creating all these reaction videos, which just meant tremendously a huge uptick in PR and marketing because of them being able to react live without worrying about copyright strikes. And I thought from a creator perspective, that's interesting because we often we protect copyright, we make sure that no one can copy our work, but in this case they decided to waive it because it was better from a marketing perspective. I wonder if we will see that in other industries too. This is music, this is but I wonder if we are to see that in other.
Well, the Grateful Dead did that early on. They just said, you can copy our music as much as you want, but they can't copy the live concerts, and that's where they would make it. So you have to have some place where you can pick it up. But rappers have from the very beginning, they just cut and paste. I mean, it's like, I don't know how, in a way, they get away with it, because it's like, maybe people just give up because it's just it happens so often.
Yeah.
You can't track down every little phrase that you clipped here and there, and it's like.
No, it's hard. But tell me a little bit about the situation in Japan right now. I'm based in Sweden, and there is a lot of stuff going on both in Sweden and the Nordics and Europe that affects also the creative space. What's it like in Japan right now?
Well, that's a big question, but Japanese have always been, well, not always, but ever since their first initial exposure to the West, have been fascinated by the West. And particularly music, since the Second World War, Western music, rock, just has always been mainstream. And one really interesting shift now, though, is Taylor Swift, who always sells out all her concerts. She came to Japan, and of course she's got some core fans here, so they filled the stadium. But her records got to like number 36. I mean, there was like very insignificant. They did not sell. And so who's selling? And it's K-pop. It's Korean pop music. And they put in some English phrases, and they dress really cool. They make some cool moves, and that's what all the young Japanese people want. They don't want Taylor Swift. And Taylor Swift is probably she's very talented, but her lyrics are just way beyond average Japanese person to understand what she's actually saying. But that's one kind of thing. And then there's another trend that I thought would be really interesting to work on. I went up to Hokkaido and tried to kind of build on it. That's this thing called Japandi. And I think it's a Scandinavian word, or a hybrid word, where it's taking the essentialism and the minimalism aesthetics of Japanese culture and applying it to interior design in Scandinavian interiors. And it fits really, really well. And so I thought, okay, Japandi, this is really cool. So, and they're coming to Hokkaido. And I went up there and I realized that Japanese people, they don't really respond to that. And I think maybe the reason is because they've already got it. I mean, they like Scandinavian furniture, but it's like, what's the big deal? This is what we've already, it's like, it's like, oh, let's have a boom in Japanese food. Well, Japanese food, they've already had that for a long time, right? So Japandi is not really what I thought it would be. It might be overseas, but not here. What else? I think AI everywhere is really, it's hard to read. But one thing, though, the student this morning asked me in classes, do you think calligraphy is dying out? I said, well, I hope not. But he said that people don't write with a brush. They don't even write with a pen. They don't write. Like, students don't take notes. It's really, really, really weird. Nobody's writing anything. And it's so easy now. I mean, it's even beyond keyboards. Now you just talk and then convert speech to text. And so people are not handwriting as much as they used to. That being said, there's some very high level calligraphy available. And my students are doing very high level calligraphy. So it's available, but it's not part of daily life. It's kind of a specialized.
Ah,
Yeah. And I hope it's not dying out, but I think actually the theme in calligraphy is probably the place that this is the place to apply it. They have a phrase, perpetual youth and immortality. Well, I can't really guarantee immortality, but I usually translate that as perpetual youth and vitality.
yeah.
You're constantly reinventing, and you learn something new from the old, and you just you discover when you go back and repeat, like they're little subtle things. I think it's very difficult for our senses to pick up everything the first time around.
Yeah.
So I myself delight in coming back and making new discoveries about, oh, this subtle angle, I see how the brush works here, and then leading students to make that same thing. And the people who do not progress are the people who do it once and then just sit there waiting for the next new thing.
Ah, okay.
You can't learn anything if you just do it once.
No, that is true. And I see in the membership space, speaking of memberships, that there are many calligraphy memberships. There are many art teaching memberships where even, non-professionals, just everyday people want to learn how to do calligraphy or how to, paint art without having to be professional about it. And I see more and more of that, which I think gives hope for the future. For sure.
Yeah, it's more accessible. I mean, when I started, 52 years ago, you could hardly find a book. If you wanted to learn it, you had to come to Japan, learn the language, get introduced to somebody, pay the money, just drip. Talk about drip content. You'd get a little bit each week, and you just have to go for years and years. That was the only way to do it. And so my thought now with the membership programs is to provide massive accessibility without the boundaries of language or geography or gender or time. You still have to do it. It won't do it for you, but it's just so much more accessible now, thanks to technology. So.
Have you noticed any mindset blockages or belief blockages around, creating your own educational ecosystem, or has it been super smooth to just transition from one to the next?
Well, because I'm so involved constantly in the creating curriculum and thing, that part was pretty smooth. It's just the difficult thing was getting used to the platforms and just making the technology work. Says, how do I get this to display? And what is my client seeing on the other end? And it can be really, really frustrating. But once it's set up, it's so smooth. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And the tech support people are pretty good at helping you with that. I mean, you get into, and you got to take payments online. Okay, so there's all this new stuff, and then there's this big long checklist. How are you doing? What do they call it? Two-factor authentication. And how, are you storing anybody's credit cards? And what is all this security? It's like 50 different items you got to check off, and you can't move forward unless you do that. So there's just learning a lot of stuff that's not really that much fun. And then you ask tech support, and to them, this is like second nature. Say, all you have to do is just click this and they send you an article. But thankfully, I'm past that. My goal was to launch this last week, which I've done.
Yeah, that is so great. I mean, I guess it's just to do it, to get it out there and to test it, try it, to move forward, and not to overcomplicate it with too many different target groups and too many different offers, which can be hard enough because often we have so much we want to offer, and we maybe even have different people asking us for things. I find that in our dynamics too, we've got many different groups. We've got both the freelancers and the creators in this creative space, and we've got the tech companies, and we've got larger organizations, and then we've got in Sweden and internationally. It's like you can't serve them all, really well at the same time. It's like you have to start somewhere and build that up.
Yeah.
But as we are sort of drawing to close, and again, thank you so much for being here. It's wonderful to see where you are at right now. As you said, it's been a few years since we talked last time on this Ars Dynamics Talks. So much has happened since, and here you are, and you're now building out your own online curriculum. which is super inspiring. Do you have a sort of, if we're looking into the future, where do you see yourself within the next few years? Let's say 3, 5 years, or wherever your future.
Yeah.
What is the ideal future for you?
Good question. Well, I believe in the hybrid approach. I'd like to get the online community. Ideally, I would have my 2 online communities going so actively that basically I can make a living. I mean, it just switch over whatever salary or whatever income I had before would be taken care of with that, and then I can do all kinds of extra creative stuff. That would be the ideal.
Yeah.
But it takes time. You have to market it skillfully and get the word out and provide massive value.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think it was Alex Hormozy who gave the advice to when you do have employment and you're building something up on the side, to build it up so you have 6 months where you can sustain yourself before you transition. And I know, as you said, you're coming to the end of this term, so obviously there is sort of a time limit to, what's going to be. Yeah. So, is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you would like to share?
Well, you had mentioned that like who I might recommend as another guest.
Yeah.
So there's a man named Jürgen Strauss. He's Australian, actually, German name, but he lives in Australia, and he has a website called Innova Biz, and I've been on it twice on his podcast. And it's really, really well organized. I mean, he has all the key words, and he was doing this long before AI started doing that stuff. And I was on number 296 and number 514 of his. That was a few years ago, and I just checked, and he's up to number 618. That's a lot of people, and it's about innovative business and people in the creative space. I think it'd be really good to.
Yes, I'll definitely listen to that.
He might be a few months out, but Jürgen Strauss is really a good one.
That sounds really great. I love hearing that. And if people want to find out more about you, Will, where do they go?
Well, my main website is samurai-walk.com. It's SAMURAI, samurai-walk.com. And then if you go to the menu bar, you'll find social media links, and probably that's the best way to connect.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you who have tuned in and listened in, both live or maybe the replay here on YouTube or on a podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, which I hope you have, we would be so grateful for your help to spread the word and to click like and comment and rate us. That would be super helpful. The whole idea is to provide this for free as a way to touch base, as I mentioned at the beginning, to with leading creators around the world, to see what's working right now. I believe wholeheartedly that no one can know it all, and that the more we come together and we listen and learn, and we have a great peer group, the better we can also figure things out together. One of the main obstacles I hear within the creative space, I don't know if you agree with me, Will, but it's actually, I hear people feel lonely. They feel that there is a lot of information, but there is like this lack of clarity and direction. There's so much to do. They don't know where to start, and it can be really overwhelming. And I just hope that we're able to provide a safe space for anyone who's creative, innovative, you have something you want to share with the world, and to just, to feel that you're able to get started and to start small. It doesn't have to be a multi-million, gazillion, 9-figure business to begin with. It could really be, to support you with your artistic work. It could be to explore new tech tools. And Will, you are a great example of that. Yes, you said you've tried out, you're testing out this very new AI. Is the very forefront actually of online learning, to search in the platform. And as you mentioned, we talked about before, the metaverse and all of that. But it's like, to be able to try things out in a safe environment and to be surrounded by people who cheer you on and who believe in you. I think if we can provide that, then I would be happy. So that's why I'm super grateful for help to share this episode and our other episodes, because it could help someone else as well to maybe follow in Will's footsteps, as well as we've heard today.
Well, it's kind of counterintuitive, but less is more. I mean, you want to do everything and then you get overwhelmed. But if you just decide, okay, this is really narrow, it's really niche, But as you say, you don't need 100 people, right?
Yeah.
You might find 10 to 50 people who really are into that. But
Yeah.
unless you narrow down to that really specific thing and really focus on it, you're not going to get everybody.
Yeah.
So keep it simple and keep it really narrow and focused, and then you'll get traction.
True that. And walk with a good walk so that you attract good opportunities and good people.
Yeah.
I can highly recommend Namba and the breathing that will teach us. You helped us a lot during the pandemic. I didn't even mention that during the talk, that we even taught my kids, you taught them how to wield a sword, a samurai sword, in our living room. We hooked you up to our television, and you had actually a lesson online, which I thought, or several lessons actually, and even tea ceremonies you hosted during the pandemic, which I think is just a wonderful way how tech can be rather simple in a way, but at the same time have a huge impact on the person on the other side.
Yeah. Well,
So,
accessibility beyond geography and language and gender and time. Yep.
for sure, for sure. So again, thank you all so much. Tune into artsdynamics.com, where you also find more resources and support, both free resources. We also got a membership ourselves, an accelerated program and coaching and mentoring. So depending on where you are at and what kind of help you need, just reach out. I'm sure we can figure something out for you to meet you where you're at and to help you to go to where you want to go. So thank you all so much, and have a wonderful. Thank you, Will, so much. Cheers.